You're listening to The Adventuring Party, talking about gaming the Irish way. Cade Mila Vulture, you son of a gun.
Welcome to the party. I'm Dave.
And I'm Owen.
So, what are we up to?
We are on General List 9.
What in the name of named things is General List 9?
Warlord Scar is a lunatic, and as a result, he has a list of topics for Adventuring Party episodes that we haven't done yet. And there's literally about 150 of them. And General List 9 is just a list of effectively, it's 12 things that we could do an episode on. And I think a lot of them are worth 5 or 10 minutes of convo rather than the full 30 or 40 that we normally do. So I reckon we should try to knock some of these out so we've actually done them.
Yeah, fair. Well, we could start. Could have a look at these and see how much we have to say on them.
All right. Where to look of? Pick one up the spinner rack first.
Does it have to be wizards?
All right. Why is there a reluctance to have games with no sci-fi or fantasy elements? Are we so eager to avoid the real world we need to sprinkle in elves and laser guns? Can soap opera logic or similar narrative devices sub in for supernatural elements? And is real-world drama as gameable as fantastic drama? Conversely, is it okay to have such things as settings, but forbid them to PCs? A bit going on in that one.
There are quite a few questions. I'll start with the last one, for whatever. It's absolutely okay to such things in a setting and only held by NPCs. Because that can be a setting device. That could be something for the PCs to overcome, as in, oh dear Lord, the aliens are coming for us, and they have way better technology than we do, and we're just modern humans. We'll have to get really ingenious about this.
Yeah, 100%. Look, there's nothing wrong with going, you guys don't get magic. Like something like Conan, which many of the rules do allow you to be wizards, but you could just be like, yeah, only NPCs are wizards, guys. Come on, it's Conan.
Yeah.
You're here for you're killing with the wizards, not for playing them.
Yeah, many sword and sorcery rule sets specifically, like if you can play casters at all, it's generally not presented in the most positive light, and there's generally some sort of corruption mechanic and social consequences. And to be fair, power, whether for PC or a player, can be very enticing, regardless of consequences. So, well, you could absolutely have some interesting shenanigans come out of that. But let's get back further up that paragraph. You absolutely have interesting RPG settings and campaigns and sessions without any supernatural elements, like even subtle ones.
All right, let's think about. Can you think of a game where there are no sci-fi or fantasy elements?
Twilight 2000.
Yeah, you definitely Twilight 2000, set in after a fictional World War III, where you play kind of guys trying to get back home in the middle of a world that's falling apart. I was thinking of the various, like the James Bond RPG and like Ninjas and Super Spies, the various spy RPGs. They've kind of fallen off as a thing, and I'm wondering if they're ever going to come back.
Spies are definitely a thing people like, but they tend to get wrapped into other systems like Savage Worlds and what have you, from what I've seen. There are absolutely... There's a bunch of systems which do have magic and supernatural stuff in the rules, but you don't need to bring them in. Things like GURPS. GURPS is a perfect example. Because you can build whatever with GURPS. It's more like a toolkit than an RPG. Like, even as RPGs go. Even stuff like the various D100 systems, like Rollmaster and Mithras and what have you. You absolutely can have campaigns of those with no supernatural stuff.
But they do, as default, have a bit of supernatural stuff. I mean, even Call of Cthulhu, I would consider to have stuff, but it's usually not for the PCs. Like, you can get spells, and the pulpier campaigns, you may even cast spells regularly, but most of the time, magic is for the bad guys.
Well, there's also the Cthulhu Mythos skill. If I remember correctly, takes away from your maximum ever sanity.
Yeah.
So
that
it
down.
will. So
you can only know so much.
Yeah. Not good for one.
No, I was also thinking Con X. The various kind of conspiracy, or like if you did a real world kind of this is a modern day, but there's aliens. Like, would that be considered sci-fi?
If aliens are involved, I think you could safely say the sci-fi element at least.
Yeah.
But if it's just talk of aliens, that's that's or if they never show up, that's another question.
Yeah. But if you're primarily playing in the real world and you're dealing with like a military conspiracy that's been concealing the existence of aliens, like, would that be a sci-fi game?
I wouldn't say it's a sci-fi game. I'd say the sci-fi elements in the background and the setting, but that campaign, if you're just focused on the conspiracy, then I'd be hard pressed to call that a sci-fi game.
Yeah, because I think we've had an issue in the RPG scene of it's been a very heavy D&D and as a result fantasy for the last few years, and on top of that, it's been licensed games other than that, and there's been relatively little. Hey, let's do a different type of game. Now, in here, would you class superhero as a sci-fi or fantasy element? Modern day superheroes, like Marvel superheroes. Because I wouldn't.
Oh?
I would class them as their own genre. And they're not sci-fi and they're not fantasy. They have different rules and different expectations.
Well, I mean, under the broader umbrella of speculative fiction, they'd say fit into that, but so would horror, which isn't necessarily sci-fi or fantasy either. So that's actually a fair point about them being their own thing. Although, again, they can very easily have elements of sci-fi and fantasy in them.
Yeah. Now, horror will have similar kind of fantastical elements often. Like often deal with gods or angels or devils. Anything else that, like, there's the Dallas RPG, which isn't really exactly an RPG. It's more of a board game. There are a couple of telenovela games which are kind of sort of, I think, play with the tropes of telenovelas, you know? That everyone gasps and stuff and go, but I am secretly, takes off false moustache to reveal slightly smaller moustache, your father.
Yeah. I mean, it'd be stretching the realm of probability, especially with the casualty rate in your average soap environment. I remember somebody comparing the likes of Emmerdale to World War II at one point.
Are there any straight World War II RPGs? I'm trying to think.
There's absolutely I believe there's a white box World War II game that recently got a new version in the works. What is the name of it? White box.
Because there's tons of it's World War II, but there's Cthulhu, it's World War II, but there's werewolves. You know, also werewolves.
So World War II Operation White Box is what it is. What system? Yeah, I believe it's for first edition D&D, but I'm not 100% sure about that off the top. Oh yeah, no, rule system classic D&D/AD&D swords and wizardry. So
I cannot think of a rule system I would use less for World War II than D&D.
Well, older versions of D&D, were a bit. well, to be blunt, a bit more deadly. Like, at least potentially.
They were, but I've never thought of like soldiers of World War II having class levels. Like, I mean, I can't think of.
Yeah, the
No, just
entire.
no.
I mean, it is at least it is set in a a real world setting. So make that what you will.
I know, it's just. It makes me go. I mean, come on, guys. There's so many RPGs. D&D, really?
Here's a slightly obscure example. Arcane magazine, a UK publication back in the
Yes.
90s, had some great stuff thrown into it. And one of them was a short RPG that was basically you were boys in a doing your school days,
Yes.
and trying to do hijinks and get out from under teachers and all this, and it's absolutely set in the real world, inspired by real stuff. No supernatural stuff at all. You're just trying to do stuff as school kids.
Do you remember the computer game Bully?
I know of it. Never actually played it.
No, but that was a similar-ish concept where you were playing. Now, I believe you didn't actually play a bully. I think naming a bully was a bad idea. But you were basically a guy in school trying to deal with this. It was like kind of Grand Theft Auto in schools. So yeah, I mean, I definitely think we are shorter on. Hey, let's play. Let's play some games, man. And oh wow, everything's based on D&D, or it's based on something D&D derived, or it's fantasy, or it's a licensed product. It is a bit disappointing that that's happened. I'm looking at people releasing new RPGs, like non-licensed RPGs, and someone's doing fantasy, and I'm like, oh guys, this is so crowded. It's such a. What's your unique hook in the setting? Are you set somewhere? We know you're a generic system that you're going to roll, and it's like so many heartbreakers being produced by a new like we learned this lesson that you can't just make a knockoff of D&D, and everyone's back to making knockoffs of D&D again because they're brand new and they haven't learned. They don't know what a heartbreaker is yet. They're just coming along, going, "I'm going to do this thing."
Yeah, like unfortunately. You're probably not somebody's probably not creating something that special off the bat, or
No.
system or setting wise. I mean, there are exceptions, absolutely, but
I'm going to tell you something controversial. The new generation coming up don't understand selling out.
Oh,
they don't understand it. And I'm not, this is not me critiquing them exactly. It's not how they see things working. They'll talk about doing things like, what brands should I partner with? I am building my brand. Now, to be a crusty old fart for a second, back in the 90s, can you imagine telling someone that you're getting into RPGs and you're going to build your brand?
I think I'd assume somebody was playing way too much Cyberpunk 2020.
Yeah, no, I'm going to basically make myself the product, and then I'm going to team up with the biggest and best companies, and I'm going to stand for the bigger the company, the more I'm going to stand for it. Can you imagine a bigger culture shock for people kind of our generation? Someone going, the bigger the company, the harder I'm going to go for it. Can you imagine that?
Yeah, no, I just tried chewing over that idea.
Just think about that. And I'm not critiquing them. It's the way it works, right? But they buddy up with the bigger the brand, the better, because that's more potential audience. And the bigger the brand, the harder I should go for it, and the more I should stand for D&D, because the bigger the brand, the better. And We used to bully people for selling out, man. You know, we used to bully people for that stuff. And I'm not saying we were right to do so, but we kept that stuff in line.
It's definitely a different world.
Like that used to be, if you were selling out, was there a worse move than be successfully accused of selling out? It used to be a death knell, you know?
Yeah, that I can't really disagree with that.
It used to be that was the end of you. You sold out, you're done. You're no longer be taken seriously as an artist. And it's gone the other way. And I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm not saying they're wrong to do it. But it's just such a like, does counterculture even have a value anymore? Like, it is the counterculture.
Depends on what you want from a counterculture or what you expect, what your expectations are. We have drifted well off point.
We have drifted, but like those are the good ones sometimes. I'm just saying my answer would be if someone came up and said, "Hey, has anyone ever told? Did you ever told you back in the 90s they were going to build your brand?" My reaction would be, "No, man. Hell, believe you get your ass kicked saying something like that, man." To quote Office Space, because I realised that now, oh dear God, they're right. And I'm not saying we were right, basically going after people for selling out, but it kept some stuff in line, and it kept certain things about like doing the same thing that other people were doing, but slightly different, used to get made fun of. And I'm not saying that was a good thing, but it did push people to be creative sometimes. And a lot of the time it was bad creative. Like we made a ton of really bad games in the 90s. And we're making bad games today as well. But often the ones in the 90s would do their best to be different. Yeah, they would usually fail. But,
very different games in the 90s that could not be accused of being carbon copies of anything else.
No. Do you remember Over the Edge?
Dimly.
Yeah, I mean there were weird ass games out there. Do you remember like Amber doing diceless role playing for the first
Amber was fascinating.
Yeah,
like to know if I never actually played it, but fascinating to read.
And I thought that like having kind of wacky ideas for games, people kind of throwing ideas around and going, "Oh, let's do this," and it's be really weird. And it is really weird. And maybe it's not terribly good, but you go back and you read some of those RPGs and you go, wow, there's some great ideas in here. That was one of the things I found when I went looking back through Traveller. There's some dynamite ideas in Traveller. There's some there's 8 pages of mechanics for running trading in Traveller that it gets a bit spreadsheety, I'll grant you. But by God, why is no one else stolen this? It just handles it. You just roll some tables, that's what you get. That's 12 tons of this cargo is available. Oh, fair enough. And everyone else is going, oh, you think about this. What should be appropriate for... You're the GM. You don't have to think about what's appropriate sometimes. This is what the type of planet is. Roll it up. That's what's there, guys. Take it or leave it. Take some cognitive load off yourself, man. Speaking of which, unified mechanics and cognitive load is also on General List 9.
It is. Should a game use the same basic mechanics for every action, or is that just limiting what the game can do? Are people who want to roll one dice and get the happy number just lazy, stupid, or are they legit overwhelmed? Again, a bit to unpack.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind a basic resolution mechanic that's used for most things. You can do quite a lot with that. However, I think you should be willing to expand it a bit to try and force some game design space into situations. Like, I think one of the biggest issues with weapon design is the removal of everything but damage code. And that created a problem where they're having to kind of reverse out of the cul-de-sac by going, okay, we got rid of all of the stats on weapons but damage. Now daggers suck and greatswords are great. So let's reverse out of this cul-de-sac by inventing traits and stuff. And then that's extra rules you have to learn because you're still committed to this one single die. Oh, we can't have individual stats on them. That's too complicated. So let's make a bunch of keywords you have to remember. I mean, I think you have to be flexible about that. I think a common base mechanic is good, but you have to be willing to bolt stuff on. And I mean, if you want to do spellcasting, you can do spellcasting as just a generic skill test that kind of resolves stuff with magic. It's not actually very satisfying. Magic is better often when it does a very specific thing. Like, I think the laziest magic design is magic can do anything. Just narrate it. I think that's horrible. I want magic to do basically very specific things, and I would have magic much more about this does one thing. Like, if you look at how Brandon Sanderson assembles his magic systems, one of the things he does is magic just doesn't do anything. Magic often does a very specific thing. I can burn steel. What does that do? It pushes things. Pushes metal things. That's it. But that's it?
Like, everything you can do, like, well, it's a variant of that. Like, use of that ability, that one thing it does.
So I can push metal things off the ground. I can bound over the place, kind of like nearly flying. Or I can push a small object at you and fire a coin at you like a bullet. So, I mean, it's like, this is what it does. And then you can start bending that by putting slight extra things you can do. So when steel is when someone's shooting bullets at you, you can push on the metal and push them out of the way. So you can do a couple of things. And I think that's cool with magic. When it has kind of it does a particular thing. Now, can you go back to the base mechanic for that? You can, but it should be very narrowly constrained about what it can do within that. And you might need roles for, like, oh, well, his magic negates magic. How does that work? Is it just a contested role? Or do we come up with something a little more interesting to do with it? It's all about elegance of design and how easy it is to remember. I think everyone, like, if you can have a subsystem that just the player has to know, that's fine. GM may have to know it as well, but you can often come up with a simpler way of doing certain things for the GM to know. Like, I mean, Vancian casting has a bunch of issues, but it's weird because you've got classic Vancian casting is still in Pathfinder 2nd edition, but you also have variant spontaneous casting. And then if you went into D&D, it's slightly different again, where, oh yeah, I memorize spells, but I still have spell slots that I can use on any of the spells that I've memorized. So, I mean, yeah, it's like, they're all slightly different.
Like, 5th Ed has, like, pseudo-Vancian, I think. It's not quite the classic.
No, you effectively have an array of spells prepared, and you can use your spell slots to cast any of those spells. So it's like spontaneous, but you can change them. So yeah, I mean that's what I think on that one is there's nothing wrong with a unified mechanic, but you want to be able to scaffold and build some stuff around that. It's a lot about teaching and memory tools and RPGs being textbooks without good cheat sheets often. Because if you could just often you could collapse it down to a page of mechanics or a page of reminders and references and just give that to the player and then staple that on at the end of the card sheet and you flip to that.
Yeah.
You know, it's often about the learning tools being bad more than the mechanics being too complex.
Yeah. I can absolutely see an appeal for, like, lighter rule sets, whether or not the rule set is any good, because the impression of there's going to be less cognitive load just to read the damn thing or to use it.
My take on a lot of the reduced complexity rule sets is they're fine, but, like, I still have to learn a game for effectively what it's going to amount to a one shot, and I could just run an established game, and I will get more enjoyment out of doing that. I will actually get more enjoyment out of reading a full system and learning a full system than I will, like, spending a couple hours or an hour maybe reading a thing in an adventure for a one shot, and then having to teach. Like, I'm a teacher. I spend a lot of my time teaching stuff. I'm fine teaching stuff. Yeah. I don't enjoy teaching stuff more than I already have to teach stuff, you know? So, explain this simple RPG, you know, a lot of times, like, can we play the thing where we know the rules already? And I get that's being lazy and stuff, and I get that. But one-shot RPG systems, It's fine. Like they're fine. They're grand occasionally, but I usually prefer something with a bit of heft. Because one of the things about it is gaming is about, or good game design involves being able to make choices and the choices matter. And a lot of the time in the cut down rule sets, they prize speed of resolution, which often means it's about rolling, being good at rolling dice. And when you fail, it doesn't really matter. It's only a one shot. And when you succeed, well, it doesn't really matter. It's a one shot. Fine, but I don't think the best game design often happens in them.
Yeah,
you
know? There's also the thing that a lot of the light rule systems might be fine for a few sessions, but break down once you start trying to add any complexity to them, or for character development over time, which, as we discussed in a recent episode, is quite important.
No, absolutely.
All right.
Absolutely. All right, we do one more?
Yeah, one more.
All right.
Random bastards.
All right.
Players who want weird and wonderful outcomes every roll versus those who would like to be able to plan and achieve goals. I know which, and I would lean to. I mean, the former could be fun as a bit of spice here and there, but I personally would lean towards the latter, being able to get information and plan and act on it. Weird and wonderful with every roll sounds good for a short time, or now and again in an odd situation. As in, well, you go off. We're going to get absolutely wasted and see what happens in this city of wonders. Well, what does the random table say? Oh boy! But that's got interesting consequences.
It is true. Look, a little bit of randomness is fine. There are crit fails for a reason sometimes, but it's tough to. It can be tough to just come up with this random thing happens. What is it? It can be fine. Once in every so often is grand, but I think if it starts happening too often, have you ever had a player with a Rod of Wonder?
Rod of Wonder, no. Deck of Many Things, yes.
Rod of Wonder is, I had a player with one, and it's 2 actions to use one in Pathfinder 2nd Edition, and that's bad. So I reduced it to 1 action on the strength of he will probably never do anything with it, and I think never successfully did anything interesting with it. It just did something kind of random because they've toned down how much it can do. And I didn't want him waving his Rod of Wonder instead of casting a spell when he could cast a spell and then wave his Rod of Wonder if he wanted. I once drew, I think, 4 cards from a deck of many things, and the net effect was nothing. It was, you gain several thousand gold pieces of gems, you escape from the next predicament that occurs to you, you're imprisoned within the earth, so that cancelled by the escape, and then you lose all your money. So at the end of it, I was exactly the same. And I kind of said, yeah, that's my experience with the deck of many things. You know? But yeah, I know people who want weird stuff happening, lots of things. It's effort as a GM to come up with it sometimes, and I mean, I think it's better off for a player to be coming up with prompts for it, and they may need a table to roll on or something. Like, a lot of the time, the old days when the actual game would wobble when someone used chaos magic because something genuinely dangerous could happen, that's kind of gone. You know? You don't have one guy tossing out a fireball by accident anymore. It just doesn't happen.
The 40k games do have some interesting cycle tables, but yeah, like D&D itself, not so much. And like the thing is, in D&D is the 8,000-pound gorilla at this stage. So
Yeah. I mean, I think those ones, they've been nerfed because they would get so much negative feedback, and then the player cast a spell, but it was a fireball close range that killed everybody.
Mm.
I mean, I think that's part of the fun of the random character, which you may not want in your game, but it's what the random characters want.
Yeah,
they want a bunch of randomness to talk about afterwards. There's also the person who wants to be a little bit transgressive with their stuff, and I did this. No one could be ready, for this to happen.
Mm.
When sure, whatever. I played an orc who's a priest of Sigmar in Warhammer. And I intimidate anyone who notices that I'm not a human. I'm like, okay, fair enough. Like, rock on, but not for me.
Mm.
Yeah, all right. Have we got any more in us, or we go at that point? We've cleared out. We got the clinic on there as well. Our general problem solving one.
Mm.
How to improv good NPCs. That's a tricky one.
Yeah, no, that's definitely definitely one for another time.
We should put up the clinic and get someone to pick one off for us, and we'll tackle it.
Yeah. But anyhow, our ramblings aside, this party is in fact over.
Thank you for listening to the Adventuring Party. Join us on our Discord server, where we keep the party going after hours. Otherwise, you can find us on Facebook, YouTube, Spotify, Twitter, or you can email the hosts at party@theadventuringparty.net. The Adventuring Party is released under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial Share-alike version 3 license. But you probably knew that already. We hope you enjoyed the episode, and look forward to seeing you back here next week. Goodbye.